Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah in the Society of Creative Anachronism. I am known as Lady Sarah Isik bint Abu Zakaria. I'm a former Arabic linguist, and one of my areas of interest in the SCA is Arabic calligraphy. There's a really cool and beautiful history of Arabic calligraphy inside of the time period focused on by the SCA, and I would really love to see more Arabic scrolls and to see that the Arabic scrolls that we do have look more period. And I'm working on building a bunch of resources towards that end. So this will hopefully be one of them. What I'm going to talk about today is layouts and margins and how to decide where to put the words on the page to make Arabic scrolls look more Arabic. Um, so in English, you'll have a margin over here on this side, and you'll just kind of write and write and write and write and write. And you'll do your best to make sure there's complete words on the end of every page, and you'll bring it as close to this margin over here as possible. But if you have the choice between going over this line or scrunching things up in this area, you'll just move that whole word over to the next line. And we learned to do that in kindergarten and first grade, and this is just how we write. And that gives us sort of a zigzag sort of feel to this margin over here. And we see that on a lot of Arabic scrolls, or not on Arabic scrolls, we see that on a lot of European language scrolls that we do for the society, unless we choose to do sort of a center align. And we get the zigzag on both sides of our writing. That's just kind of how we write in European Latin-based alphabet letters, and it's what we're used to on the whole. You will see some scrolls where people have done really, really good planning, and they have these margins on both sides very, very firm, and all of the letters fully fill up your columns on the page. And those are really cool, but they're fairly rare in the society just because they do take so much planning to get just so. But that's generally how we approach this sort of thing with Latin-based scrolls and Latin-based writing. With Arabic writing, we really don't see the zigzagging back and forth on either side very much. We see it sometimes, but not much. Obviously, in Arabic, we're going to start with our beginning margin over here and our secondary margin over here, and we write in this direction. Now, this margin over here is going to be like these two up here with the very firm margins. We really fill up the whole space with Arabic. Sometimes at the end of more like a paragraph, you'll get a little bit of an indent, but generally you won't get that in general. That was a lot of generals in a row. Now, this is tricky to do in English, trying to fill up that whole space with no extra gaps. So the question is, how do you achieve that in Arabic? And there's a couple of ways that you do that. One of the common ways is that the way I was saying up here, that when you have a word that you're not sure if it'll go over the margin or not in English, we're taught to bring it down to the next line. In Arabic, I've seen a lot where you just have one letter that sort of breaks out that way on the margin, and you'll actually see a very little bit of zigzagging sort of on this side of things. And we're talking by like one letter, maybe by two letters, or the tail of a letter sort of will break that margin, but not very much. And that's one really common option. Another one is you're writing and you have two letters that are going to break that margin. And so you'll write them on top of the other letters in a smaller script. So you'll just sort of write them up above. And that's a very common solution as well. But we're talking 1 out of every 5 lines-ish. You might see something like that, possibly even less. These things are most common in like novels and literature in period, or in the scientific books like herbals and bestiaries and astronomies and those type of books. You'll see this sort of just breaking these lines, adding a little bit of extra whatever. You'll see this style very commonly. With the Quran, because the wording of that is very, very precise, it hasn't changed in like 1,000 years. And because it's so practiced, you really don't see any kind of zigzagging. You don't see any kind of little mistakes like this in the Quran. You really only see this in the more secular writing. But the question is, how do you fill up most of the space all of the way with only minor errors occasionally, and only in the secular books? Now, there's something about Arabic calligraphy that is really cool that is not discussed in a lot of the beginning Arabic calligraphy books and in the beginning Arabic videos, and that's that they stretch their letters and compress their letters, and they do it according to a set of rules. And that stretching and compressing of the letters is part of how a calligrapher can plan and fill up the page entirely. And what you'll find with the Quran, you'll get over in here and over in here and over in here, sort of in these columns, a little bit of stretching in these areas to make it fit exactly inside of this line over here. With the less practiced calligraphers, and especially with the secular texts, you'll get the stretching sort of over in this 1/3, but not over in this 2/3. So the calligrapher will be, writing most of his sentence, and he'll get over here and go, oh, I better start planning. And we'll stretch over in here and then compress a little here and get to that end and manage to get the end of his letter right there, and go over here and then go back to writing according to the more standard ratios of the sizes of the letters. And then again, over in this third, start paying attention to and stretching and compressing as he needs to again. I say he, but I believe there were actually some female calligraphers. Ibn al-Bawab, his daughter, was a known calligraphy teacher. So the question is, which letters can you stretch and which letters can you not stretch? So I'm going to go through this in the alphabet according to the order that I was taught, which is the order that I can't remember the name of my book. There's a dictionary that is organized in this order, which is why I'm using it. This is not the period order for the alphabet. It is designed according to the shapes of the letters, and it puts like-shaped letters together, which will be more convenient for teaching you about stretching letters. So that's the reason I'm going to use this order. So the first letter is Aleph, or Aleph, and there's just nothing to stretch with Aleph. It doesn't connect to much of anything. It's just one stroke long, so there's no stretching that happens with Aleph. Then we have what we call the tooth letters. So let's go with bait as a word. So ba, yeah, ta. These are all just your do little guys. You can stretch the middle letter like that. You can stretch the last letter like that. Excuse me. And you can also compress a letter in the center there. Traditionally, this letter, each of these letters would be an even amount, but you can sort of shift them around as you need to. You don't even have to have them all be the same size in a word. So this would be bab, which is door. this letter and this letter is the same, and I've clearly made one of them much bigger than the other. And this is one of the ones that is commonly stretched, is your teeth letters. So that would be ba, yeah, when it's in these forms, teen, and this guy whose name is, I'm forgetting right now. Oh, the other thing I'm going to say is that just for the purposes of this video, where you would have 3 dots or where you would have 2 dots, I'm going to do the dash and the little doot instead of the dots, just because I find it's easier in videos like this to tell what goes with which when I do it this way. This is common in modern Arabic handwriting. I have not seen this in period Arabic calligraphy. You would do the dots in the calligraphy. All right, so we're gonna go with our jim, our ha, and our kha. So are the next ones we're gonna go over. These are another one where there's just nothing to stretch. You'd have to go like this to try and stretch something in this word. This word means mountain. And it just looks better to stretch these other letters. It doesn't work to stretch the jim or the ha or the ha. They're the same shape, it's just the difference of the dots. So I'm not going to go over the other letters specifically. Next we're going to do our friends dal and zal. And again, these are some of the unfriendly letters. So we've got the judge, which means chicken. It doesn't connect to anything. If you try and stretch it more, it starts looking like other letters, which I'll get into in a minute, and it starts losing its proportions, and you can't stretch it this way, which again, it starts looking like other letters. So these are non-stretchable letters. We've got ra and za, which we're gonna go with zahur, which means flowers. And again, you can't really stretch anything. When you start extending your dal and your thal too far down, they start looking like your zain and your ra, which is part of why these don't stretch. And these guys, they already go to the bottom limit. So this is kind of where the line would be if you were writing on a line. And these kind of go to the bottom limit already. You can stretch them out horizontally down at the bottom a little bit, but not too much. So these are kind of like 50-50. You can kind of stretch them a little, but not too much. All right, so those are those guys. All right, seen and sheen. Seen and sheen. In modern Arabic handwriting, one of the ways to write these real fast is to go like that. So we're just going to write semek, which means fish. And this would be one of the ways to do it in modern Arabic handwriting. Instead of doing that, you just do a nice long line. And you can make that line as long as you want modernly. In period Arabic calligraphy, I have not seen this yet. I have found no evidence for this inside of the SCA period of interest. So we're going to call this one another 50-50 question mark as to whether we can stretch it or not. I can say that in Kufi style script, this is it. That's all you get for your seen and your sheen. You don't get any more of this stuff going on. And up until, I want to say like 1050, I haven't seen seen and sheen start getting longer. There's some things that I've seen very late period that might start seeing some of this stretching happening. But I haven't really tried to look at the dates too much, so I'm not sure if they're talking 650 in Common Era, or if we're talking Hijri, which would put it in the 1900s. It just, I'm a little bit, I don't recommend choosing to stretch out your scene and sheen at this time. I don't have the evidence for it. So if somebody else finds more evidence for this stretching happening in period, I would love to see it and document it, because honestly, that long stretchy line is one of my favorites to do. So that's your scene and your sheen. So we're gonna go with our Sad and our Dod. These are emphatic letters. They're very difficult to hear in English, and I'm out of practice speaking Arabic, so I'm probably not saying them correctly. These ones are actually really fun to stretch. So this is basul. Basul. It means onion. So normally you'd write it a bit more like that, but especially in the earlier styles, you can stretch that nice long shape right in there pretty far. It's going to be, as tall as your tooth letter is and shorter than your highest, and it won't go underneath the line that you write on, like, at all. But you can make that a really fun ovaloid sort of shape. So that one's a really good option for stretching, even though scene and sheen are not, which, like I said, has me baffled. All right, we're gonna go with, these guys are also emphatic letters. It's our ta and our tha. And again, I'm out of practice saying them. So we're gonna go with tabib, which means doctor. And this is, again, you can kind of get that stretchy ovaloid shape going on. You see this stretchy ovaloid a lot in the Kufi style, and a little bit in some of the earlier Nask and the earlier Luth. They stop stretching this as much by the time you get to later period, and you don't see that one just stretched as much in general, not as much as the Sod and the Dod. But that's another fun ovaloid to make. And then we're going to go with our Ein and our Rein. And Rein is one I've always struggled to say. So we're going to go with Yelab. I have an extra. That doesn't need to be there. Yelab is the verb to play. And the Ein, there's just, again, no way to stretch it without it looking like a different letter. So this is not a stretchy letter. We don't stretch that one. All right. So that's the last of our letters that come in pairs. We're getting into our letters that are in singles. So fe. So fe and qaf look like they should be a pair, but they aren't, because if you have a line that you're writing on, fe stays on top of the line and qaf comes under the line. So they look like they should be written the same and be considered a pair the way these other ones are, but they're not. So that's that clarified. So for this one, for fe, we're gonna go with the word feel, because I like elephants and that's what it means. If you try and start stretching feel, it either gets out of proportion or just looks weird. So fe is another non-stretchy letter. Kaf is a stretchy letter, but only in its final form. So kalam, you've got the same problem that you have with feel, where it just, when you try and stretch it, it just looks funny. But if you go with yatrok, which means to knock, like on a door or something. This tail in here, you can stretch a lot. And you see this space right in here being stretched all the time in period calligraphy. Cough is a yes for your stretching. All right, calf and lamb also look like they should be a pair, but are not. That's your calf, that's your lamb. And you've got the same issue that when you have a line that you're writing on top of, lamb stays on top of the line or only goes a little under the line, while calf likes to sit much further under the line. So that's that explained. Calf has two forms in period calligraphy. This one is one that we see in the middle of words and earlier in the period. You start seeing it in the Kufi style, but this form happens throughout the entire period in all the styles that I've seen. We're going to go with yebki, which means to cry. And this can be stretched. So if I wanted to really stretch it, I totally could. That is a very stretchy letter. However, the other form that you do also see is not stretchy. Or it has only limited stretchiness. That's also yebki. That also means to cry. And there's only so far you can stretch that because it can't be any taller than the alif. So you have, and this angle can't get too crazy right here. So you can only go so far before this diagonal and this angle starts getting weird. So that has only limited stretchiness. This one up here is the one that you want to choose if you want to go way stretchy, because I want to say like 11 nokta wide is around the limit for that one, which is about as wide as you can get any individual letter when you're stretching things out. So that one's a lot of fun. Oh, and I do want to address the finial form for calf real quick because it's so different than all the other forms. So yedhook, to laugh. So yedhook. Yedhook. And I'm saying that H wrong. I know I am. I've never gotten it right. But anyway, so this is what calf looks like in its finial form. And this also has limited stretchiness from here to here. You can sort of increase and decrease as you prefer. So calf is, yes, 100% stretchy. Lamb has limited amounts of stretchiness, sort of like this calf up here. So we're going to go with, let's see, what word are we going to go with? We're going to go with lemon, which is a cognate. Moon. So lemon, you can kind of stretch it somewhat here, but you can only go so far with the stretchiness before you start getting just this long line that has no meaning. And you can only get this as tall as an aleph. You can't go any taller than that. Meme. Meme is another not very stretchy letter. So meme looks like that in its independent form. When you're writing on a line, it goes like that. Actually, it's completely non-stretchy now that I think of it. So madrasa means school. that circle right there, if you start trying to stretch it too much without increasing the height, it starts looking like our sods and our dods. So can't stretch it when it's in that form. Semua. Again, when you're trying to stretch that one, it just, how do you stretch? It just doesn't work. Can't stretch it when it's in the middle form. When it's in the finial form, let's see. You get a tail, and you can stretch that tail a little bit, but this, honestly, we're already too long. It starts looking like other letters. You can only do just a very little bit on the tail of the meme. So I'm going to call it generally non-stretchy. Noon. Now, noon is interesting. Noon, I thought, was a tooth letter along with our ba, ta, and tha. Ba, ta, tha. But it's not. When you put it next to the other ones, it's deeper and wider than the other ones. This is not a word. This is just me comparing the letters. So noon stretches in the same way as all these other ones, except more so. If you're going to stretch a tooth letter, because this one is already deeper and wider, you want to pick noon first. And you just like, let's go with toots. No, that doesn't have a noon in it. Yellow one. It means to color. I can't pronounce it right now. I'm really out of practice with speaking Arabic. But it means to color, like I said. So you can really get in with that. I put that in the wrong spot. You really want to center it up when you've got it in this independent or finial form like this. All right, I'm going to show you another sort of an exemption. So this is going to be anib, which means grapes. You're going to stretch the final letter before you stretch a middle letter. Or you would stretch the middle letter, but not the final letter. But generally, I've seen this style first, where they stretch the final before the middle one. So, noon is stretchy. I keep tapping the support for my camera. I'm sorry about that, guys. I hope you're not getting seasick or anything. Non-stretchy. Hatif, telephone. There's no way to stretch it. There's nothing to do. But I'm going to show you it in all of its forms just because it has so many. This is the ha, this is the ha, and yet tebe. And this is for yete. Yen tebe. There we go. Sorry, lost track of my dots. And this is the he. It has 3 very different forms. It's still the same letter. But none of those forms are stretchy. There's just nowhere to go with them. Wow is the next letter we're going to do. Wow likes to be stretchy. Mostly in the tail. Right in here, wow likes to stretch. We're going to do waterta, which means rose, like the flower. It's very pretty. Wow likes to stretch. Generally, when all the letters are in this independent form like this, you won't stretch anything. It just, the proportions end up off when you do that. It looks better when you don't stretch them. So you would stretch words around this word and not pick this word in particular. That word means to iron, like ironing clothes. And you would stretch the wow right here in the middle like that. All right, and we're going to end with the letter yeh. which is also the form of Aleph Maksura, where there will be no dots underneath it. It's a weird letter, Aleph Maksura. I'm not going to get into that because you guys are interested in the letter forms, not in the Arabic. Yeshua. Stretchy. Very stretchy. Right in here, we like to stretch this. In general, you probably noticed from the words that I've been doing and the ones I've been stretching, this final letter is the one that they'll stretch first, and if not, they'll pick something close to the center. I don't see the first letters being stretched very often. The rhythm of Arabic and the rhythm of the calligraphy tends to like the center or the final ones much better for stretching. So that's all the letters in the Arabic alphabet and their stretchiness. I hope that's given you guys a few ideas of what to do and how to do it, and some variety for your letter forms for your calligraphy, to be able to do more Arabic scrolls. So thank you for your time.